Chair, the meeting is now live.
Diolch. Thank you, Carol. Bore da pawb, a croeso cynnes i chi gyd ar diwrnod oer iawn, ond rhadferth iawn hefyd. In opening this planning, taxi licensing and rights of way committee, I'd like to welcome everyone to this online meeting this morning, Thursday, 21st of November. Item 1 today, please, Carol's apologies and roll call.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Gareth D. Jones. Councillor Adrian Jones.
Present.
Councillor Tom Colbert.
Present.
Councillor Angela Davis. Councillor Angela. Oh, she was here earlier, but she seems to have gone. So I'll just check on that later. Councillor Deb Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Claire Hall.
Present.
Councillor Peter James.
Present.
Councillor Ed Jones. Ed has just dropped back into backstage, so I'm trying to bring him back into the meeting. So Councillor Ed Jones, I can see that he is now in the meeting. Councillor Gareth E. Jones.
Present.
We've had apologies from Councillor Karina Kenyon-Wade. Apologies also from Councillor Carl Lewis, who's on other council business. Councillor Jeff Morgan. No, nothing from him yet. Councillor Gareth Pugh.
Present.
Councillor Edwin Roderick. Councillor Edwin. I can see that he's online. Councillor Edwin, you need to unmute your microphone.
Present, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Elwyn Vaughan. Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson.
Present.
Councillor Hugh Williams.
Thank
you, Chair.
Thank you, Diolch yn fawr, Carol. Item number 2.
I'm also present. Sorry, I didn't get called. Obviously, I wasn't in the meeting at the time.
Yeah, I noticed you were back in, Councillor Ed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ed. Thank you. Good. Some of the line. Second item on our agenda this morning, minutes of the previous meeting, to authorise the chair to sign the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 31st of October as a correct record. Looking for a proposer and a seconder, please. Proposer, Councillor Peter. Seconder, Councillor Hugh Williams. Thank you all very much. Can I just say possibly at this point now, item 7 on our agenda, which was the Gambling Act policy 3-year review. That is a mistake and shouldn't have been on the agenda. So just for clarity, as we're moving along, that will not be discussed by this committee, but will be before the Taxi Licensing Committee at a later date. Carol, are you happy I've covered that off?
Yes, it needs to go to the Licensing Act 2003 committee, which is a completely separate committee to this committee. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of interest from members relating to items to be considered on the agenda.
Oh, I can't remember. Me, item 6, is that?
No, we'll bring you in after we've heard Deb.
Okay.
Councillor Deb, that's later on. Thank
Okay.
you. B, to receive members' requests that a record be made of their membership of the town or community councils where discussion has taken place of matters for the consideration of this committee. No, to receive declaration from members of the committee that they will be acting as a local representative in respect of an individual application being considered by the committee. No, and finally, to note the details of members of the county council who are not members of the committee will be acting as a local representative in respect of an individual application being considered by the committee. Again, I don't think we have anybody from that, so we'll press on to planning applications for considerations. Carol, as this is a deferral, I understand that some members now will have to leave.
Yes, Chair. So this was previously discussed at the meeting on the 14th of October. So Councillors Angela Davis, Claire Hall and Edwin Roderick were not at that meeting. so they're not able to participate in this further consideration of the application. So what I will do is I'll move those 3 members to be attendees, i.e. to be members of the public watching online.
Good, thank you. And we'll call them back in once we've concluded this application. Can I ask that every member has had an opportunity to read the update pack? This was sent out yesterday morning at 11:07, and it was also sent out again as a reminder. I'll give you a couple of seconds if anybody has not read them to declare. Good. In that case, thank you very much. So we'll move on to 4.2, 24//0820/FUL, Kevin Massive, Morgan Street, Kai Hopkin. It is, as I mentioned before, application that was before us previously. So it's come back to us again this morning, and I'd like to hand over now to Richard, who will to guide us through the application. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. I am displaying the presentation, so hopefully everyone can see that appropriately. Okay, as mentioned before us, this is a deferred application in relation to the change of use of a detached domestic dwelling to a detached young person's residential care home. The proposed application is located within Kai Hopkin. It relates to an existing detached residential dwelling of approximately 7 bedrooms in a large plot, approximately half an acre in size. As denoted on the slide in front of you, the yellow star indicates the application site to the west end of Morgan Street. Slide on screen here shows the application site in its entirety, denoted by the red line boundary. The red line boundary of the site is wholly within the curtilage of Kevin Maisive. It relates to the property and does not include any third-party land. So, as raised at the previous committee and to be reiterated, the application has been considered in accordance with the current local development plan. It's considered to comply with policy H3, which does make reference to the provision of care homes as appropriate housing. Given the existing use, the proposed use that is specified, officers are satisfied that subject to all the material planning considerations which we addressed within this application, that the proposed change of use from a C3 dwelling to a C2 residential institution at this property is acceptable and is considered to comply with policy H3 of the local development plan. The application doesn't propose any alterations to the existing access or the existing dwelling. As discussed at the previous committee, and which I'll reference in the update report now soon as well, this plan here shows the parking provision proposed at the site. The hatched rectangles on the screen, they denote the 7 parking bays provided as part of the development. The application has been thoroughly consulted on with the local highways department, who have raised no objection to the parking provision or the impact onto Morgan Street with the access to the dwelling, which would be used as a care home. The marginal increase in use isn't considered to warrant an objection from the planning department. This slide here shows the existing floor plans of the dwelling, and the next plan shows the proposed. There's no external change to the dwelling at all. So the dwelling as is on site and has been present on site for a number of years would be unchanged. the impact on amenity would be no different in respect of overlooking or anything like that, as is currently present on site with the use of the property as a dwelling. So here's a context photo of Morgan Street looking towards the east. So I was stood in the access going into the property subject to this application. So this is it looking towards the east. This is where you would access the site from. Behind me is the cul-de-sac, and this is the area further out towards the west, which is a no-through road cul-de-sac area. And here is the property which is subject to this change of use application. As you can see, it is a large detached residential dwelling already present within the area of Kai Hopkin. As mentioned, there's no proposal to alter the existing dwelling, so the design is considered acceptable, the layout and scale, that it remains unchanged as to it's already there. Given there's no changes or development to the existing dwelling, it's not considered that it would increase any issues in respect of overlooking or amenity on neighbouring property, or loss of privacy that would already be experienced, if any. The proposal does seek to include a boundary fence in a certain area of the site. Officers would seek to just condition that to make sure it is of an appropriate height, whilst PD would allow them to erect a fence of a certain height, just to make sure the details are appropriate and it doesn't cause any impact on neighbouring properties. A condition can be imposed on the permission. The application has been consulted on by Dyfed-Powys Police, who have reviewed the application, and they have recommended a condition, which is like a management condition. There's quite a number of points in there that they would require to adhere to and ensure compliance with. It has been consulted on Dyfed-Powys Police. Subject to that condition, they haven't raised any objection to the proposal, and officers would seek to include that condition with any granting of plan permission. In respect of ecology, again, there's no alterations to the existing dwelling, section of hedgerow, and there's biodiversity enhancements proposed, which would be secured as part of the application. So before our committee, when it was originally heard, it was deferred. The deferral reasons were in relation to highways access to the site and the scale, capacity and sufficiency of existing provision in the area to meet future local needs. Based on these deferral reasons, further consultation has been undertaken with school service, PCC highways and the social services in relation to those deferral reasons. You should all have access to the update report. In respect of school service, no objection has been raised in regards to the proposal. Highways have been consulted on the matter again. They have raised no objection to the proposal. I have reviewed the ownership in respect of the red line boundary of the application site in consultation with legal. The curtilage and the red line that was denoted on this plan here is wholly within the applicant's or the existing property owner's curtilage. It takes no part of any third-party land or anything, so it's considered that the appropriate serving of notices has happened and that no third party will be impacted. There's no change to the existing parking or access arrangements, to the site. Consultation has been undertaken with social services, who do not wish to comment on applications by a private applicant. Just to reaffirm planning policy's position on applications in the planning system, The planning system should be efficient, effective, and straightforward in its operation. Its purpose is to not interfere with or inhibit competition among land users and investors. It should remain impartial, neither discriminating against nor favouring any particular group or members of society. Through the additional consultation, no objection has been raised by those consultees. Highways have fully reviewed the access arrangements to the site and the parking provision provided, and they raised no objection. It is noted that additional public consultations have been received since the last planning committee. These comments are highlighting the necessity for the development and associated safety concerns of the change of use. However, officers believe that no new substantial plan issues have been raised beyond those already addressed, with appropriate conditions recommended where necessary. I'd just allude back to the condition put forward by Dyfed-Powys Police and the management plan and control measures secured for that condition. Based on the full review of the application, the additional consultations and the public comments that have been raised, officers are satisfied that additional comments and reps do not introduce any material changes to the application, and it's still fully compliant with planning policy. The recommendation is therefore one of conditional consent with the conditions outlined within the update report. Thank you.
Diolch, thank you, Richard, for taking us through that. Just for clarity now for members of the public watching, as Richard highlighted then, there has been no material change in this application. So as such, we are then not allowed to have any additional public speakers. So as this has been a deferred application, I'm now going to hand this over to members who are now in receipt of the information gathered since the last meeting. And the floor is yours. Who would like to start us off? I can't see any hands. Councillor Hugh Williams, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As a member who sits in the Estragon ward, neighbouring to Caerhopkin, which is a small village, typical of one in Powys, I ask the committee to consider the concerns of the residents living in that small village. There are 4 other homes registered in the Tywer Uchaf area, and to me, it's unprecedented that we ask for the Dyfed-Powys Police to comment on applications. Now, can I sort of put you in a situation where you represent a small village where the Dyfed-Powys Police have reported 85 missing people. Now, and that's with the current number of residential homes. This is an additional one. Richard, thank you for your report. I appreciate that. But I need you to confirm that Powys County Council has no involvement in this establishment. It's a private enterprise. It has no jurisdiction over this facility. So should there be an issue, Powys Social Services, Children's Services have none. There is no monitoring requirement from Powys County Council, and no Powys County Council children will be referred to it. This is a completely outside project which the locality is going to be subjected to. Yes, there are conditions which make it a reasonable request. But even when you get a report from the Education Department, who in the Education Department up in County Hall can give an opinion on what's going on in Maes Derwen and the other primary schools around here who have had resources tied up involved with those missing children, with all the implications of that. It's a simple thing to tell the planning department, yes, there's capacity, but what about the resources that follow that? Now, I'm totally sympathetic to these people, totally sympathetic to the children that are brought into this home. But they are not, let's make sure of this now, these are not Powys County Council young people. And therefore, I'm not sure how it reflects the local development plan, because a local development plan is a local development plan. We are bringing people into Powys, possibly causing a pressure on our resources. So I would ask the committee to consider that and to respect the views of the local residents who have a fear of crime and are not happy with the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hugh. Peter, would you like to just come back at what Councillor Hugh raised at the beginning of his statement, if that's okay?
Yes, by all means, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hugh Williams, for those questions and raising those issues. Obviously, when it comes to determining planning applications, our duty is to determine them in line with planning policy unless material considerations indicate otherwise. And I think that's why the officer recommendation is one of approval, because we've considered it against the policy in the local development plan. I don't think there's any relevant policies I could see within Future Wales that connect to this either, but it's still there as a consideration, Future Wales, and we have to determine in line with planning policy. So some of what the local development plan doesn't do is include a specific policy. It's not for children's care homes. So what we're really doing is dealing with the impacts associated with the development. It's not relevant who the applicant is. It's what's relevant to us is determining whether the proposed use is acceptable in terms of planning policies and meets the policy requirements set in the plan. So we've considered whether the access is suitable. We've considered whether amenity impacts are suitable, whether it meets our ecology policies, and we've reviewed it thoroughly from that perspective. And in our opinion, it does comply with those policies. Now, when it comes to looking at potentially at resources and resource implications, there's probably a massive separate debate to planning around that, because nationally, I don't think it's a planning issue that I would raise that one, which is why Richard has referenced that it's not the role of the planning system to interfere in the market and in terms of competition. We know there's a shortage nationally of care places for children, so that's there. So it's a resource pressure that's facing probably every other authority in the UK at the moment, but that's not written into planning policy to determine or consider the resource implications of the development. So I think overall, I sort of understand the concerns being raised. I think the crime and safety, or fear of crime and safety, crime is a material planning consideration. That's clear and it's understandable, but that can be mitigated as we've proposed within the officer report in terms of having a planning condition there to ensure that could be adequately mitigated. So we've addressed that concern in my professional opinion. So I'm not sure if I've answered all of Councillor Williams' questions. I almost, Chair, if I may, just ask Richard whether there's anything I've missed, Richard, because you're obviously more heavily involved in this application than me. Have I missed anything that you would like to raise, Richard?
I think that was comprehensive, Peter.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you both. I've got three hands up in front of me. I've got Councillor Peter James, Councillor Gareth Jones and Councillor Elwyn Vaughan. So I'll take them in that order. Councillor Peter, please.
Thank you, Chair. I still have a little bit of concerns. This being a cul-de-sac of residential properties, most of those properties would have probably 2 to 3 cars on those residential properties. We're talking that they've made provisions for 7 parking bays, but at staff changeover, there could be up to 14 cars at that same time on that site, and also including that social service officers have meetings there, so that's extra cars on top of that. I'm just quite concerned. That road is very narrow, and there's a tremendous lot of moving and throwing of vehicles that are going to be needed, more parking spaces, I personally feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peter. Yeah, I think we discussed this at the previous meeting, but I'm more than happy. I think Alistair is with us. Alistair, if you're in a position, please, are you able to address Councillor Peter's concerns? Are you with us? Is Alistair Knox with us?
Hello. Hello.
Hello,
Sorry, Chair.
we've got you now.
There we are. That's fine. Sorry.
Thank you.
Slight microphone problem. Yes. Hello, Chair. Nicola's with us. She's the case officer. I don't know if Nicola would want to pick this up or whether she wants me to. I'm quite happy to if that suits.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't mind. So I mean, as you're aware, all applications that we have, we consult our guidance of CSS Wales parking standards, which is what tells us what sort of parking allocation is needed for each development. That has been done. It comes out as 6 parking bays for the development of this size. So I mean, that's the guidance that we go against. They're often 1 extra parking space. There is also the parking within potentially the garage, which we can use as a parking area as well, which could give extra parking space within the site. But as far as we're concerned, we're happy that there's enough parking being proposed for what's being for the development.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that it is changing from residential to a business where, that changeover of staffing could cause a big issue at that time, because they do 2 changeovers, morning and night. So that is a concern for me. And I think somewhere along the line, it would be quite nice to have a site visit of this, but I'll leave that with you.
Thank you, Peter. Nicola, can I just reiterate that when you were assessing this application, you were looking at it as a business and considering the points that Peter raised about the turnaround?
Yes.
Yeah, no, please.
So CSS Wales has different sections, so that we've got sections for residential dwellings, shops, commercial businesses. One of those sections is as a care home. So for this care home with 4 children, this is the calculation that we've come to get is for the 6 bays.
Thank you for that clarity. Councillor Peter, you happy with the response?
Well, yeah, but I mean, again, like I say, I would prefer a site visit because you get more clarification, especially of that narrow cul-de-sac entrance to the properties, which are residential as well.
Thank you. Point noted. Councillor Gareth E. Jones, please.
Yeah, can I just pick up on that last point that Councillor Peters made? Is there any way we could actually put a condition to say that no officer, no member of staff can park on the street? So put that as a condition. I don't know if that's possible. I'll just put that out there. Can I also correct the amended data that's been provided? The school services mention Abercrave School. There is, in my understanding, there is no such school in Abercrave called Abercrave School. The primary school in Abercrave is Ascol Cribeth, and perhaps we could have that amended in the minutes. When we considered this previously, the proposer for this development stressed very much about how it's going to meet local need and need for the children of Powys. And Councillor Hugh, I think, has correctly said he doesn't believe there's going to be any Powys children in this home. And I've done a quick search this morning. Clanrider Mochnant is 107 miles away from Kyopkin, while Swindon's only 105. So I think Hugh is right. If we approve this, this is for other authorities and not for Powys. And I'm not sure if it follows alongside then the closer to home agenda under social services, but that may be for something for the developer to consider. The point I wanted to make was, as this is going to be if we approve it, the 5th children's home in the area, is there any planning requirement that we consider over proliferation of such facilities in the community?
Thank you, Gareth. I think there's 3 points there that have been raised. So we'll take the first one, condition reparking on the street. Again, I think we discussed this at the previous meeting. Richard, are you?
I was just bringing in Highways colleagues just to confirm that it's a public street, as my understanding. We wouldn't be able to condition parking on that, any illegal parking, blocking, or anything like that. Civil enforcement would it be parking ticketing or anything like that would be subject to it. As Nikki and Alistair has said, the site provides the adequate parking as per the CSS standards. That's what we're considering before us. The application has made provision for that, and no objection has been raised from the statutory consultee in respect of that matter. So no, we wouldn't be able to put a condition to prohibit parking on Morgan Street.
Okay. Gareth, can you remind me what was the correction in the wording of some of the update report that you mentioned?
Pardon?
Can you remind me what you said in relation to correction in the update?
Yeah, the school services are called the school Abercray School, and it should be Ysgol y Crybeth.
Okay.
You know, and I've already raised it. I've raised it with the head of service as well.
Okay, thank you for that. And finally, you brought up about the 5th, if we were to approve this, be the 5th in the area. Richard, are you happy to respond to that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As Peter's mentioned as well, there's no specific policy which restricts children's care homes or no targets to meet within a local development plan. I would just refer back to the statement I read from Plan and Policy as Wales as well. It's not the purpose to interfere with or inhibit competition among land users. So it is a private business that's proposing the use there. It's not for planning to interfere with competition.
Thank you, Richard. Gareth, are you wishing to come back? Are you happy with those responses? You're on mute, Gareth.
Yeah, I am. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Cynghorydd Elwyn Vaughan, please.
Diolch Cadeirydd, a diolch am y cyfle. I'm a bit disappointed in the first place that social services it was a bit lacking in their response, because we had quite a long discussion in the last meeting about social services and need for clarification of local demand in particular. And reference has been made to policy H3. So I looked up policy, I've got a copy of the LDP in front of me. It says, provide a suitable mix of housing types to meet the range of identified local housing needs. So the key thing there is identified local housing needs. Therefore, because English is a foreign language for me, I thought I'd better check what local means. So if you look up what definition of local, and I quote, it says relating or restricted to a particular area or one's neighbourhood. Or if you go to the Cambridge Dictionary, and I quote, it says from, existing in, serving, or responsible for a small area. For instance, limited to a particular part of the body. So in medical terms, be local anesthetic or local swelling, for instance. So what that highlights therefore in a Powys context, we're talking about a small part of Powys, not the whole of Powys, as somebody touched on earlier. And to me, therefore, in this context, local would define specifically the Cwm Tower area. So Cae Hopkin, Abercraf, Ystrad, and perhaps we'd be generous, include Ystalyfera in that also. And therefore, if you look at the actual application, bearing in mind this is for children and young people from out of county, and bearing in mind that we already have 4 similar facilities in the area, I question how we can be justified as having met the identified local housing needs clause. And I don't think it has, to be honest with you. And that is why I can't support this application as it is. And that's why I will be voting against it. Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd.
Diolch yn fawr, Cynghorydd Vaughan. Peter, I'm going to ask you to pour some light on.
Yeah. In terms of the policy situation with the local development plan, as I explained earlier, there is no policy specifically for care homes. So that policy is a very general policy. And maybe in answer to Councillor Hugh Williams' sort of questions earlier on, there's no overall sort of methodology or approach set nationally within Wales that has ever come into the plan making process when it comes to preparing development plans, assessing that overall need. So generally, the approach will always be a positive approach when it comes to supporting care home provision generally, because it's there to look after the most vulnerable people in our society. So the policies are there isn't, as I say, no specific policy, but the general starting point, in my opinion, will always be a sort of positive, from a positive perspective, that we're there to try and support the most vulnerable in society. When it comes to the policy issues that a development generates, because we've got no specific policy, it doesn't have a policy in the plan that says children's care homes may be permitted subject to the following criteria. It's just not there. So what we have to do is use the general development management policies in the plan and look at the issues that are associated with that development. And that's what we've done as officers. So that's the way the planning system works. We have to determine in line with policies unless material considerations indicate otherwise. So I know other issues are being raised here around resource issues and other considerations, but they're not, they sit outside the planning system. As a company or as a business entity, as I say, we're not determining on the basis of who the applicant is, but really what we've got here is a business that's looking to invest in the area. If it hasn't got demand there, it wouldn't be looking to invest in the area. So I'm going to keep it very, very simple. It's a business decision for that company as to whether it wants to invest in the area. Our position is not to interfere in the marketplace. And Richard's quoted, I think, from Planning Policy Wales in the quote that he referenced earlier. So that's clear. The planning system's not there to interfere in the market. So whilst I understand some of the concerns, I think ultimately it's a business decision here for that company whether it invests or not. As a committee and as a planning authority, we have to determine in line with planning policy. I'm not going to dismiss what Councillor Elwyn Vaughan has said either. You've raised a policy there which is about catering for local needs. But as I say, there isn't a specific policy for children's care homes. If we knew that this was such an issue, I think that would be a consideration that we could include such a policy, but it's a going forward issue. I can't backfill a policy at this stage. Okay.
So can I come back there?
Pasquale, yeah, of course.
I think I appreciate what Peter said, but I do think we're all very clear here what the limitations are, and we're not against interfering. We're not interfering in the market and things. I think raising that actually skews the discussion. I was focusing specifically on the policy being used to justify the application, and the policy states clearly a range of identified local housing needs, and then clause 4.6.5 actually goes on to talk about, in particular, needs of the county's ageing population, decreasing household, goes to specialist housing needs, supported accommodation, etc., etc. So there's quite a lot there. What I'm saying, nowhere in the application, and bearing in mind, as you've said, it serves out of county, I don't see anywhere justification and thing to say there is an identified local need. And therefore, I can't see how it stacks up. Diolch.
Diolch, Elwyn. Councillor Jonathan, please.
Diolch, Chair. Couple of questions. One is relating to something that Councillor Peter said a little bit earlier about site visits, and others have mentioned site visits. It seems in this case, because of the nature of the access, of a site visit would have been useful for us as a committee. I believe a site visit was requested. Why? And it was the case in the past that site visits happened fairly regularly, and I understand because of the cost of doing that that happened less now. But why in this particular case did a site visit not happen?
Peter.
Chair, I'll come respond if I may. I know it was requested prior to the previous committee. We, as chair, we have to discuss that with chair when it's raised, and we agreed, and with the vice chair, and we agreed because it is a change of use of an existing property. It's a property that's already there that has access to it already. If there was significant change in access arrangements there, amount of vehicles and so on, then I could see the point maybe in undertaking a site visit. But given that it's an existing property that already has vehicles that can enter and leave, etc., and we've got sufficient photographs, we've got access to Highway Authority here, it was agreed that a site visit wouldn't be necessary in this instance. I think if it was a new build, new development, that might be slightly different, but that was the agreed position at the time.
Yeah. No, I understand and respect the decision. It's just, it seemed in this case where the nature of the use of the building was changing so significantly that access was going to be more of an issue. And it seems that certainly the local community have felt that is the case. But anyway, I won't dwell on that. And the second question was, again, one for Peter probably, and this is relating to the comments from Dyfed-Powys Police. And I'm really wanting some guidance really as to, I mean, they've raised a number of concerns, most of which have been talked about today, and wondering how much weight I, as a planning committee member, should give those concerns when I come to make a decision as to how I'm going to vote on this planning application.
Shall I come back, Chair?
Peter, please do.
Yeah. They're not a statutory consultee in the process. We wouldn't normally consult with the police authority. My understanding is, Richard may correct me, because we have crime and safety issues raised, we have consulted with the police authority. So members of the public have raised fear of crime, could be antisocial behaviour as an issue or a concern that they have. So we have contacted or consulted directly with the police authority, and that's the response that they've had or we've had. It is a material planning issue. The fear of crime, there's planning case law around that. So it is a consideration for members in determining this application. We are satisfied though that those fears can be adequately managed or mitigated, and the conditions being proposed to do that. I don't know if Richard, again, whether I've missed anything key that you might want to raise, because you're closer to this than me.
I think, as you said, Peter, like we have consulted Dyfed-Powys Police, and they haven't raised an objection to the proposal, and they've put forward a condition. So it's just reaffirming no objection has been raised. It is a material consideration. We've duly undertaken consultation in respect of public comments that have been raised in respect of this aspect. But again, the police are happy, no objection, subject to the condition, and compliance with it, should it be approved.
Thanks, Richard. And of
No,
course,
can we
Councillor,
come back, Chair?
yeah, Councillor, because also we must remember that this home will be registered with Care Inspectorate Wales, and they will have responsibilities of standards as well when liaising with the police as well. So hopefully that will alleviate some of your concerns as well. Yeah,
Can I come back?
Of course you can. Of course you can.
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit confused because either I put I mean, Richard has described the police as being completely happy and not objecting. Well, they may not have objected, but I certainly wouldn't describe the position as completely happy. So do I put those areas of concern from Dyfed-Powys completely out of my mind, or do I use their concerns in the process of me coming to a decision?
That's yeah.
Yeah, as I said earlier, Chair, fear of crime and safety is a material planning consideration. So it must be considered as part of this application. Richard has quite rightly said that the police authority have not objected, but they haven't reached that position sorry, what they've done is obviously offered a proposed a condition, a management plan condition. So we're satisfied that that addresses the fear of crime, antisocial behaviour adequately. But as a committee, you can still press or ask questions about that, challenge it if you don't think that's sufficient. But we haven't got the police authority wouldn't ordinarily be a consultee on a planning application. It's just that the community have raised this issue, so we've gone to the police authority to understand their perspective, and they've come back with that proposed condition.
Yeah, thank you, Peter, and I'm pleased you did approach them, and I think the information they provided helps me come to a decision. So, yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jonathan. Councillor Tom, please, and then Councillor Gareth Pugh. Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, yeah, I fully understand that people are fearful of the unknown and crime and safety. I think most of us, many of us are in rural communities. I live fairly remotely, and I am also in fear of crime. I put my trust in the police to manage things and to look after me, and I guess most people do that. And it seems to me that there are a number of, I think in this case, children coming to this area, and that the police will hopefully be able to manage them. So that's one point. I think I have the greatest respect for Councillor Elwyn, but local, I think, there's, if living in Vellinvark, if we had a need for some children who are displaced, there is no local place here. We're not going to have local residential homes in every single area of Powys, so we have to have them in some places. And yeah, I think it is unfortunate there are so many in this area. I think that probably does need to be addressed, but I don't see the local bit working for me. As regard to the parking, I think we did discuss that before. This is a very large area. I mean, if they weren't sufficient, if 7 isn't sufficient, there's plenty of space to put more parking spaces in there. So I don't really see that as an issue. I get the feeling that, from what I've heard Peter Morris say, that this does meet the planning requirements. So if we were to reject this, then what would happen, Peter? What would be the options for the developer?
Well, yeah, as I see it, he would then appeal, and that would go to the Inspectorate Wales. And Peter, would you want to?
No, that's if the committee obviously we haven't got to that point yet. As a committee, you would have to propose reasons and agree those reasons for refusal, and they need to be based on sound planning policy advice. And I'll advise this committee if I don't think they're sound policy advice. That's my role on this committee. If it was refused, clearly there are options available to the applicant. One option is the appeal route. The other option is to look at the refusal reasons and see whether they can address those refusal reasons and resubmit the planning application. So that's an alternative option available to anybody that receives a refusal of planning consent.
Okay, thank you, Peter. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Councillor Gareth Pugh.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, we've had some good discussions this morning, and I appreciate a lot of the concerns that have come forward. But we are a planning committee at the end of the day, and I appreciate Richard, Peters, and the Highways, all the responses that have come back. And they seem to have addressed all the concerns very comprehensively, I would have thought. So as a planning committee, we have got to be careful that we don't put ourselves into a position of putting Powys in the position of them going to an appeal. So although I do sympathise with the concerns that have been raised, I also think that this application has been covered very, very well. So when you are ready, I would go with officer's recommendation, that of conditional consent. Thank you.
Was that a proposal?
It is, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh.
I would second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Have we got anybody else wishing to contribute this morning? Is that a legacy hand, Councillor Gareth, for you? Councillor Adrian, please.
Yes, just before we go further, could we just have it cleared up about the road? Because yesterday in the supplementary it said it'd been an adopted highway, and now this morning I read from the community response that it isn't. So that then becomes a civil matter on access to that site. Is that right, Chair?
Thank you, Councillor Adrian. Yeah, I'm looking at Richard. Are you happy to take that? Yeah, we've had a lot of correspondence through yourself and myself from the community, and that has all been passed on to the officers for their consideration. So, Richard, if you'd address that, I'd be grateful.
Thank you, Chair. I might refer to Highways as well after, just for their comment. Just to go back, so the plan on the screen at the moment, the red line is wholly around the applicants, or the existing owner of Kevin Maisted, around their property. That red line doesn't encroach on any third-party land. The notices have been served correctly onto the owner of Kevin Maisted by the applicant. There's no encroachment onto a third party. That has been checked with the land registry documents. It is understood, looking at the land registry document, there is on the deeds, an area, I think you might be able to see my mouse, by Morgan Street, this line here to approximately the end access into Kevin Maisted. This area here, it is like a legal access agreement in place. That's a civil matter. It's not for us to consider with planning. We're satisfied that the appropriate notice has been served on the appropriate landowner for this application, and it's not impacting any other landowner. The application makes no changes to the existing access provision to and from the site. They're not amending, moving, or altering that access, and the property will be accessed should the approval be granted, as it currently is being accessed through the residential property. In respect to the adoption of the road, probably more of a civil matter between Highways and the owner of that stretch of road as to who has legal responsibilities for its upkeep, maintenance. I don't think it's something to be considered as part of the planning application. It would be a discussion between the private party and the Highways Department as to who should be upkeeping of that road.
Thank you, Richard. Before you come back in, Adrian, do Highways wish to come in now? Nicola or Alistair, have you anything you wish to add to what Richard just said? Are you happy for us to move on?
Thank you, Chair. It's probably one that I should pick up rather than Nicola. Yeah, as Richard said, he shared documents with us. We've looked at historic things. It is something that I'd looked at back in 2017 when a anonymous sort of report was made about the area. And I think in Richard's update report on page 2, I think it is, isn't it, Richard? You've included the extract that we sent to you. And that's from a document that was maintained by Highways Development Control over a number of years. And what they would do is, as roads were adopted, they would mark on that plan the areas that were adopted. And you can clearly see there that it does show that the access to the property is sort of covered by the length of the adopted road. So from what's been shared by planning and what we've looked at from land registry, I don't believe there are any issues over it being a public highway and that access is up to the property entrance.
Thank you, Alistair. Thank you for clarifying that. I wanted to bring you in for that piece of information. Councillor Adrian, please.
That's fine. I think we should go to the vote myself now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, there's something in the chat box indicating similar to that. So I will give everyone a chance. If no one else wishes to comment, Carol, are you happy to take us to an electronic vote, please?
Yes, Chair, just pulling that up for you.
Perfect, thank you. Should appear shortly in the chat.
Just to let you know that Councillor Jeff Morgan did join the meeting, but he didn't hear all of the officers' presentation, so he won't be participating in the vote.
Thank you for that, and thank you, Jeff, for clarifying. Yeah, there you go, members. 10:56. Just give everyone a few more seconds just to have an opportunity to vote. How are we looking, Carol?
Yep, Chair, we've got 11 members eligible to vote, and I've had 11 responses.
Brilliant. So we'll close the vote and ask you to.
Okay, so vote is 6 voted for the officer's recommendation, 4 against, and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much, Carol. So application 24//0820/FUL has been passed as with officer recommendation. Thank you very much, Richard, and officers and members for your contribution towards that application. Right, and that's the only application, members, before us today, so we shall
Chair,
move on. Oh, yes, bring
before
the
you,
others
you
in.
move on, I
Please
need
do.
to bring in Councillor Clare and Councillor Edwin back in.
Please do. Yeah. Is that a legacy hand, Councillor Adrian? Thank you.
So hopefully they're coming back in now. Councillor Clare and Councillor Edwin.
Yeah, I can see them both in
See
the
them
room.
on the system. And
Yep.
Councillor Angela did say earlier on that she may not be able to rejoin the meeting. So she's not showing up on the list of public attendees. So she's had to leave.
Thank you for that, Carol. Good. Right, welcome back, everyone. Item number 5, to receive the delegated list. Hopefully we've all received the list. I'm looking for a proposer and a seconder. And any questions? Councillor Gareth Jones.
No, I've got a question, Chair.
Go on, please go for it.
Which is on application 24/0443/4, which was the 3 temporary rural dwelling properties in Sarn. I got 2 questions. The first one, as Powys has got a interest in the management of this property, why wasn't an application brought to the planning committee? Because I understand all applications in name of Powys, or that Powys has an interest, should come to the planning application committee. And the second part is, why does this seem to be treated differently to other rural development applications? We had one recently for a rural development in the Welshpool area, where the officer's recommendations was to refuse, and part of the refusal was because there's other properties available that the applicant could live in. This application is within a couple of miles of Abbeymuir, Montgomery and Churchstoke, all of which are quite sizable villages, and I would have thought the same reasoning could have been applied to this application as well. So I think we appear to have a little bit of inconsistency in our processes, and I'd just like to know why this one's been approved. Well, firstly, why wasn't it coming to our committee? and why was it approved? What was the reasons why it was approved over and above the one in Welshpool?
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. I think the answer to the first one was wasn't considered to be a major application, so that's why it didn't come to us. But Peter, you're in a better position to answer those two questions, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Gareth Jones, for questions. The scheme of delegation when it comes to planning applications set out in the Council's constitution. It's in section 13 for anybody that's interested. That's where you find, for instance, the call-in procedure as well, reference for members to call in applications to committee. When it comes to POWIS applications, or any application that involves the county council's property, it has to be a major application, and that would mean it's 1 hectare or more, or it could be 10 dwellings. So in this instance, it's below the threshold to be a major.
It's
so
it's more than an hectare, the site is.
It's well, the actual red line boundary is less than 1 hectare, maybe with the land, because the application isn't for the whole area. It's just for the dwellings. So happy to discuss that one further if that helps you, Councillor Gareth. On the issue of consistency, that's important for me that we are consistent. I'm more than willing to come to this committee. I know I've talked to the chair, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, whether we do some training. And we're just currently looking for training, excuse me, a day where we could do some training around rural enterprise dwellings. There are different types of rural enterprise dwellings. So you have the policy around this is set nationally in Technical Advice Note 6 by Welsh Government. And there is a practice guidance that sits alongside TAN 6, which goes into more detail around rural enterprise dwellings. As I say, you do have different types of dwelling. They all have to go through a series of tests, these proposals, and the primary test is one of sort of the functional need, how the dwelling actually connects to or relates to the enterprise that's actually on site. And they're seen as very much as an exception policy at a national level to normal housing. So I think it would help probably if we come back to you at a training session and maybe run through the different types of enterprise that applications we see. They could come from an existing business, a bit like the one that went to previous committee, but they can also come in from prospective businesses as well. When they tend to come from prospective businesses, because they can't, one of the tests is around sort of finance and showing that it's a good company that can eventually turn a profit. We would always look to a temporary permission for those types of enterprises. So it's not straightforward, the policy around this. It is complicated, but I think it would probably benefit us all if because I know we've had a number of these applications come to committee where we can go through them maybe in a training session and answer general queries around and questions around that. I'm here to be challenged on consistency as well. So that's what we want. We just want to be consistent in our decision making. But each application is on its own merits and they are all slightly different as well. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gareth, is that a request to speak?
Please, one for Peter. With Powis's temporary policy, what is temporary?
In this instance, I haven't got the decision notice in front of me, but it should be a 5-year, basically. Sorry, I think Councillor Gareth just confirmed it was 5 years. So
yeah, it was 5 years. Is that Powis's policy temporary? I always thought it was 3 years now.
Yeah, unless Richard, you able to help me? Because I don't deal with these all the time.
I have done permissions for 3 years, more so like newer enterprises, which they demonstrate a number like the functional requirements and everything to be there, but they may not be fully fledged. So we are a bit more restrictive on them. I have done them before where it's a 3-year condition, and at the end of that, they kind of need to demonstrate that the enterprise is kind of self-sufficient, and they've met the requirements as per the TAN 6 and the enterprise guidance. As Pete mentioned, the enterprise guidance supplementary to TAN 6 is very informative. There's a lot of further detail in there as to how to officers to assess it, and it does go into detail within that policy as well.
Yeah, I need to come back, Chair, if I may. There is a horticultural guidance, planning guidance that the authorities prepared as well. That was prepared earlier in the year, and that did consider the 3-year and the 5-year issue. And within that is proposed as 5 years. So I think when we come to the training, let us bring that out or show you that and what it's showing or proposed. It's there as policy now, or as well, not policy. It's there as guidance really for us, and it fits with TAN 6. We've got the Welsh Government planning guidance with TAN 6, but we've got a separate one specifically for horticultural developments as well. So, and that was very much one of the issues that was looked at, the length of permission for any temporary use. Okay.
Could I just come back in on there, Peter?
Yeah, of course.
Where does that leave us then as far as the 4-year rule of a certificate of lawfulness? If the building has been up for 5 years, can they then come back at you and say, well, the buildings can stay there because they've been up for 5 years?
Yeah. Off the top of my head, I'm going to struggle to answer that one.
Well, I struggled myself.
Yeah, I suggest we come back and talk about that separately.
Councillor Pugh, are you happy that we look at this at the training session, which I think we've kind of penciled in for the 11th of December for an hour and a half in the morning, and we'll raise those points then, if that's okay with yourselves and the committee, and hopefully put in another couple of items.
Yeah, fine, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Any further questions in relation to the delegated list? If not, can I have a proposal in a second that we receive them? Thank you, Councillor Gareth E. Jones. Thank you, Councillor Hugh Williams. Good. Right. We shall now move on to item number 6 on our agenda this morning, taxi and other licensing. So we've only got one item on the agenda, which is the taxi licensing fees, and we have got Natalie with us. But before I move to Natalie, declarations of interests. To receive any declarations of interest from members relating to the item on the agenda, namely the taxi licensing fees, in which to approve the licensing fees for the period of April 2025 to 2026. Councillor Deb Edwards, please.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. I have to declare an interest because I am employed by a company that runs taxis. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Rachel, would you give some advice, please, on what Councillor Deb should do in this situation?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Carol, I think in this instance, if you could put Councillor Deb Edwards backstage.
Yes, I can do that. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you for that, Carol. Thank you, Rachel. Just give Councillor Deb a second just to go backstage virtually. Happy, Carol? I think she's gone, yeah. No, she's still with us.
Just trying to move her. So I've moved her as an attendee so she can watch the proceedings as a member of the public.
Perfect. Good. Right. Item 8, taxi licensing fees 2025-26. Natalie, over to you. Chrysler.
Thanks very much. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read the report, but I'll just go through and give a bit of additional information and run through it. So the setting of the fees is governed by the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act, and it allows for cost recovery for the administering, controlling and supervising of the Hackney carriage and private hire regime. Fees are entirely limited to cost recovery and not for profit, so we must ensure that they are transparent, accurate and could stand up to legal scrutiny. To ensure the accuracy of these fees, we use the All Wales Toolkit for fee setting, which was created by the licensing technical panel, whose members include senior officers from each of the local authorities in Wales that have responsibility for licensing functions. The toolkit was created and developed with the aim of providing a consistent mechanism for setting fees. This toolkit allows for local authorities to put in their own unique costs, such as staffing hourly rates, which is then broken down into time spent on processing applications, inspections, training costs, dealing with complaints and inquiries, as well as compliance and enforcement. It also takes into account the cost of materials, so the vehicle plates, the badges, the stickers and the brackets. This is all then put into the toolkit, which is essentially a fancy spreadsheet. And then this works out a very accurate fee total, taking into account all of the various costings involved in processing and producing a license. You'll also see within the report that a table is included with a comparison with other local authorities. However, what neighbouring authorities charge isn't a consideration when working out our fees, and nor is it when considering to approve them. Cost prices between local authorities can vary for a number of reasons, such as differences in hourly rates that staff are paid, the number of staff they employ, the pay level of staff involved at various stages of the application process, material costs the suppliers use, all varying costs, and also as well the number of licenses that are issued by an authority has an impact on the fee. It's also worth noting that the fees for next year are based on last year's costs. This is to ensure that we accurately record the numbers of licenses issued and against actual cost and actual staffing costs. So we are confident that the fees that we are proposing are fair and are accurate and would stand up to any legal scrutiny. The fees in the process have also been reviewed by Section 151 officer who support the fee recommendation, and also the monitoring officer who also supports the recommendation that these fees are approved by a committee, and we can then progress to the required 4-week public consultation period. If we do happen to get any objections from the public within this time, this will then have to come back to committee for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Councillor Gareth, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, can Natalie just clarify a couple of points for us? Under section 2.5 of the report, it says that the reason for the expected 6,300 increase in fees is due to the number of expected renewals in the first 2 quarters of 24-25. Should that be 25-26, or does that account for what you just said at the end when you base the fees on this year for next year? That's question.
Yeah, so we have a 3-year cycle of driver renewals, which we're, these first 2 quarters of it is correct. The 24-25, yeah, we're in the middle of that renewal cycle now. Okay.
Supplementary question then. Obviously, this is the best estimate of the fees required. What happens if there's an over recovery or an under recovery? Is that carried forward in the balance sheet?
How would there be an over recovery or under recovery? Because this is based.
This could be you could say you can't charge more than the actual cost. So this is the only process. You don't actually do a check at the end of the year to see if you've over recovered or under recovered.
This is only for the cost of processing the licenses. So how we've worked it out is based on, like with staffing costs, it's divided between, time spent on hearings and things. So this is all based on last year. So this has already happened. So we know.
Yeah. Thank you. On that basis, Chair, I'm happy to propose we accept the report.
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Who was that? Was that Councillor Clare, was it?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Tom, I see your hand raised. Floor's all yours, and you're on mute, Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that. I'd just like to, I'm indeed happy to go along with this, but I just, out of interest, like to know what the cost per license issue works out at. So how much, what is the unit of production here? What is the cost per unit of
The cost per unit. Well, essentially, it's worked out. So we've got 502 drivers, for example. So we put in all the processing costs. It's worked out. This toolkit works out all separate stages. So joint driver licenses, whatever the final cost that we work out, and when we put into this spreadsheet, how we put in, you know, a test takes, you know, 40 minutes of officer time, and it's broken down into minute detail. So that is then divided.
I'm sure all the numbers are right. I just want to know what the numbers are. What is the, you know, what is the overall, how much does this cost us?
Well, it costs £300 for a driver.
Well, what's the total cost?
I think Councillor Tom is asking, what is the figure that we have to recover to be non-profitable?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Sorry, yeah, okay. Well, basically, these have already happened last year, so we could be next year. We would have to, if there was any underspend or any, you know, discrepancy, we would have to incorporate into the fees for the following year. The fees, how we've worked it out, is based on figures that were in 23-24.
Yeah, no, that's fine, but I just want to know, as the Chair said, what is that figure?
I don't think Natalie's in a position to answer that currently.
No, I'm sorry.
But
okay, fair enough.
It's possibly a question that may come up next year. And that might be something.
Yeah, certainly. I'll look
benefit.
into that for you for next year. But yeah, sorry that I'm not able to answer that one for you.
Thanks anyway. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Anybody else wishing to comment? If not, I've had a proposer and a second. Carol, are you happy if I do it by hands, by show of hands? Or does it need to be electronic?
It's up to you, Chair. I have got an electronic vote.
If you've got one prepared, to be ashamed to waste your time. So
okay.
Yeah, let's put it in the chat and we'll do it that way. Thank you.
I keep hearing my voice coming.
So we've got 12 members. Councillor Elwyn Vaughan is no longer in the meeting. He's left. So there are now 12 members. So it's in the chat box now.
There you go. It's in the chat. Yeah. Thank you, Carol. When's the next meeting? Something December 9th. That's 9th of January. 12th of December.
So Chair, as I say, 12 members eligible to vote, and just increase my screen. So 12 have voted with the officer's recommendation, no members against and no abstentions.
Thank you very much, Carol. Thank you very much, members. I do believe that concludes the items on our agenda this morning. Am I correct, Carol? There's nothing else?
Yes, that's correct.
Correct.
Chair.
Good. So dim we wneud on just rhaid diolch I pawb yn dod yma. Thank you to everyone, members of the public and press who've been with us. Thank you to all the officers who presented. And as always, thank you, Carol, for your hard work in making the committee run smoothly. I believe our next meeting will be on the 12th of December. And then the one after that is the beginning of January, the 9th of December. So, but as I mentioned earlier, members, we will be having a training session. It'll be an invite will be sent out to you shortly, and we'll fill that with information that's raised over the last few meetings. So time is now 11:20. Diolch yn fawr iawn pawb. I'll close the meeting at 11:20.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members.